Well, today I have to move some fish. Some absolutely beautiful arowanas. Wow. What a place. Look at this. Far out. Sydney Harbour. Watch some cricket. This is awesome. Looks like the Channel 9 tower. We're like higher than it. Far out. How good is this? Whoa. Man, I'd have some pretty good binoculars if I lived here. It's just, oh, look at you, darling. Wow. This is amazing. Far out. This is a voyeur's dream. So what we're doing here is draining the aquarium and storing as much water as possible to keep the fish in the right amount of water. And then I'm setting up these drums to put the fish in. And it's really important that these drums are only very shallow. It'll reduce the chance of them jumping out, and also means that when the fish swim around, I want them to break the surface to keep their oxygen level up. So whenever you're moving fish, you only want them in just enough water to cover the fish. You don't want to have a deep, if it's really deep, you'll have a lower dissolved oxygen, a lower redox potential, and therefore you've got more chance of losing the fish, less chance of losing the fish if they're in shallow water, and never underestimate an arowana's ability to jump. They're very high stress fish.
Suck it like it's Marco. Feel me?
Mate, you're gonna have to give it a...
Just suck it like it's Marco and Joey.
Candine, I believe in you.
Surely it's coming out now.
Just pretend someone's got a 20, bro. Suck it real hard.
Suck it like it's Friday night.
Yeah, I mean, I can't fucking start this all off, man. Bro, it's that fucking tough. Are you sure you haven't got against the glass? Because it's so hard just to fucking...
Why can't you make it come?
Suck it like a Polaroid picture.
Come, big boy. Come on. So we've removed the sump and put the tank
Does anyone check on these fish?
to the new spot. So we're just putting a new lot of foam on this cabinet. We've got the fish in there. We've got the water all through the place in drums. And I'm just testing the water now. Particularly when I'm in these nice fancy houses, often I'm testing the water on these very fancy benches and that. And a lot of the time these are worth thousands of dollars. So having this is really good because this can contain all the mess, because a couple of drops of these dyes on a fancy bench and then you're nobody's friend. So these cases are really worth their weight in gold just for containing and being organised. Now this is a very common situation where you've got a whole bunch of different filter medias. Yeah. So we've got some filter wool, and that's a mechanical media, so that's just going to take the solids out of the water. Yeah. Using something like polyfilter is amazing for that because that will adsorb and absorb anything impure out of the water. Then we've just got some sponges and some Kamahata mesh, just for grabbing a bit of solids, that's fine. I'm really not a fan of any of these fake biomedias because the company that did all the research into parallel denitrification was Nanodynamics, and they did it for Marine Pure. So this one here is Marine Pure. Marine Pure offers parallel denitrification, so it'll help to get your nitrate down due to the surface area to the volume ratio. And then all the other brands tend to just copy this. So the thing is, if you want to get your nitrate level down, and you've got things like your noodles and all that sort of stuff, they're all going to offer nitrification without parallel denitrification. So they're going to actually increase your nitrate level. And the thing is, if you just had Marine Pure, then your ammonia is, or a higher percentage of your ammonia is able to get broken down into nitrogen gas. Whereas if you're going to go to Marine Pure and you've already got a whole bunch of media, which is going to break the ammonia into nitrate, the Marine Pure can't actually get rid of the nitrate. the Marine Pure can only get rid of the nitrate by what's broken down from ammonia. So this will actually be more efficient without these other medias. So in a perfect world, I would use polyfilter as my pre-filter. A little bit of sponge or Kamahata mesh I wouldn't mind. And then I would eventually get rid of a lot of this biomedia, and I would just get Marine Pure. I get a much better result in the long run with that. But if you're going to make any of these changes, you've got to make them really, really slowly. So you've got to change a bit at a time, because denitrification takes about 3 months to establish, and nitrification takes about a month to establish. So you just want to do these changes very, very slowly. So I just tested this water. The GH level seems quite low, so adding a bit of mineral salts is going to help the immune system of these fish. It'll also help to detoxify the nitrite, because whenever you get a test that you're concerned about, you want to test it twice. So there is a bit of nitrite in the water, which does concern me a little bit. So what we'll start doing is changing the filter material slowly over to Marine Pure, and we're going to recommend putting some polyfilter in straight away. Now, increasing the mineral salts and the GH will help to detox the nitrite. Ammonia seems to be okay, and nitrate seems to be okay. So the water change routine on here seems to be okay for now, because a big water change was done recently. And then the KH was, the pH is good, some around neutral, and then the KH was almost 0. Now, if the KH gets to 0, then it's a major problem, because carbonate is an essential element for fish. There's skeletal structure, bones, scales, and also the filter bacteria is very much governed by the KH. So if your KH is 0, sometimes that will be why your bacteria isn't working properly. That can lower your redox potential, and it can end up with issues like nitrite. But that tends to happen at 0 KH, not 1. So raising KH a little bit is going to help. Raising GH is going to help. pH is okay. And detoxing the nitrite using a higher dose of prime is going to be a good idea. So what we're going to look at doing is covering this up, because now that this aquarium has got a new position, we're not really going to want to see this. So just a bit of vinyl or something black on here is going to make this look much better, because in the other place this was against the wall. Now the wall is on the other side, which isn't too convenient but easy enough to fix. So now that the tank is in a new position, we're going to look at options to close the end. So we should be able to get doors or some sort of panel, make it look much nicer. Now these are UV sterilizers, and the most important thing about a UV sterilizer is you want very slow flow. So you don't want the tank to turn over more than once an hour. So a very small pump in here to go through the UV very slowly is what you want to do. You want to clean out the quartz sleeve a couple of times a year, and once a year you want to replace the tube that's inside. Now the best thing you could get for a tank like this is a flipper. So here's like a cheap magnet cleaner, but a flipper is amazing. That's got the razor blade on it, and it's the best way of cleaning a tank like this. Makes it so much easier with the razor blade on the magnet. Now a good thing to do every now and then is look through all your fish stuff, because sometimes it's unbelievable how much fish stuff you've got that doubles up and stuff. So here we've got a bit of acid buffer for lowering the pH. Now for fish like this, I probably wouldn't bother lowering the pH. Sydney tap water is alkaline, and these fish will easily get used to alkaline water. So these products here I wouldn't tend to use for these fish. Now we've got Algae Wafers. That's okay. I really prefer, if you're going to use Algae Wafers, to use the New Life Spectrum, because it takes 24 hours before it starts to break down, and it's not as heavily processed as some of the other wafers. This one's quite good, but I think the New Life Spectrum is better. The other thing is there is an issue with these arowanas eating all the food before the plecostomas can. So New Life Spectrum also make a gel that you can actually stick onto the glass, and that would give the catfish an opportunity to come and eat it. And sometimes feeding the catfish at night time while the other fish are asleep can be an option. So this food here, that's an okay option too. Once again, I'd really rather use the Danichi because the Danichi is slow cooked. It's not processed. It's a much more raw state, higher quality food. We've got some filter socks, which obviously we don't need for this application. We've got, I don't even know what that is, some sort of minerals for stingrays. We've got some 5-in-1 test kits. These things are cool enough to use for a quick little dipstick, but I'd much rather use something more accurate, particularly for these expensive fish. We've got some Dr. Tim's. In a well-established tank you would never use this. This is just for cycling an aquarium without fish, so that's not going to be much use to you. What have we got here? I don't even know what that is. We've got some medication. We've got some spare heaters.
There you go. Hold it up now.
Some more medications.
Hold up. Bucket over here.
Flake food. What have we got here? Oh, we've got a replacement UV tube. Oh, that can come in handy. Okay, so that 14-watt unit only fit 11-watt globe in it, and that one says 11-watt and it fit a 9-watt globe in it. So that one has been replaced and that one has not been replaced. So replacing that one is a good idea. And these UVs are really only going to do algae. They're not really going to do parasites because you need at least 18 watts in order to do parasites. So if you want parasites, you're better off going for 36 watts or more. But these ones here will just help to give the water a little bit of extra clarity, but it won't really do parasites. Now these fish are very, 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 very stressed, jumpy fish. So having open lids is a major concern. And using Perspex on glass sort of sucks because it always bows like that with the condensation in the tank. So getting some nice, well-cut lids would be a very good idea. And it's really important when you do your lids that they're not completely sealed because you need to be able to get oxygen in the top. It's very important. So a new set of lids would be a good thing on this tank. It's actually quite a beautiful tank. With an aquarium, it's really important that your lids are recessed into the tank because what happens is condensation comes up and the condensation's got to go back into the tank. Whereas if you have a situation like this, the condensation goes up and it goes over the edge and goes out of the tank, and that's not so fun. So you want to just get yourself lids that fit nicely. They fit inside there and they can't be too tight. Oxygen's got to get in because tightly fitting lids can actually lower your oxygen level. Okay, so we've tested the KH of this tank and it's quite low, nearly 1. So we're adding a bit of arowana buffer and that will need monitoring. So we've added that in, but we'd probably want to test that a couple of times a week until we get the KH to more like say 2 to 4. And then the GH was also very low, so we've added some GH supplement as well. It's very common for people to have all the right stuff they need, but it's no good in the cabinet. It needs to be in the fish tank. So these two things are getting added to the new water, and they need to be a slightly higher dose because the actual water itself was relatively low. And then the prime, we have to dose every several centimeters. That has to be redosed as the water goes in. And then we're adding some good bacteria. These products are better off kept in the fridge once you've opened them, but we'll add a bit of good bacteria in there as well. So these are the products that I'd want in the new water, but I would want to be checking the pH, the KH and the GH over time and playing with this until I was happy with the level. And because there's nitrite in the water, I'd want to be adding a 5 times dose of the nitrite probably every couple of days for now, just to detoxify the nitrite. And I'd want to keep an eye on the nitrite because I'd really want to get that to 0. So arranging your water changes to get done easily is a really good idea. And a clamp is the simplest and best thing that you can ever have having an aquarium. It often makes my job obsolete. So this thing here is an Aqua L power head, and the value of a power head is surface agitation. So it's really important that these are near the top so they can agitate the surface. They do very little near the bottom. Like you put them at the bottom, you think they're going to blow all of the stuff around, but that doesn't really achieve anything. So you really want your power heads near the top to increase surface agitation and increase gas exchange. Now, because there's a bit of nitrite in the water, I've put a bit of carbon into the filter. So the carbon is just there in that mesh bag. And in about 1 month's time, it would be a good idea to throw that away or even consider replacing it. That'll help to polish the water just at this stage. When you're filling a tank up like this, it's really important that you put prime in every 5 centimeters as you raise it up, because the prime only works instantly on what's in the tank. You can't go adding the prime and then adding the water, otherwise you're going to chlorine them. And it's really good to have a thermometer as well as a heater, because a heater has a thermostat in it, but you never want to trust it. You want to have a thermometer as well. Now these guys are pretty good at smashing thermometers, but you really want to make sure you've got a thermometer available. And as you're doing a big water change like this, it's really good to just keep a tab of the temperature. That way, if you need to alter the temperature as you're increasing the water of the tank, then that's pretty important. So these fish are very common to attack each other, particularly if you have males together. These fins are all pretty ratty, so increased water quality and increased quality of food, assuming they're not bashing each other, is really the key to making sure that these fish thrive as much as possible. So Denichi and probiotics is the food that I'd want to feed, and I'd be wanting to check my water quality on a semi-regular basis and make sure the water's as high as possible. My main concern with this at the moment is there is a little bit of nitrite, which I'm not heaps happy with, and the KH is almost 0, which I'm not heaps happy with, and the GH was low. Now we have remedied that stuff, so it shouldn't be that bad now, but these are things that I definitely want to be keeping track of, particularly with fish that are this rare, because in Australia getting hold of arowanas is not easy. And these once in perfect condition, these will be really, really beautiful fish. The other question is whether to put gravel in too. I think gravel just makes it look finished, whereas I think a fish tank without gravel looks like a science experiment. So if it was up to me, I'd put gravel in because I think it looks better. Maybe a couple of stingrays look cool too. Now, whenever you're doing anything major with the aquarium, adding some polyfilter is a very, very good idea. So we're going to put some of this in the filter, and that's just going to adsorb and absorb anything impure out of the water, remove any potential hydrogen sulfide or anything we may have disturbed, and also help to remove any extra organics from this situation. So that's the polyfilter in there, and you'd leave that in there until it turns black. Then you can throw it away and replace it. God's gift to fish tanks, this stuff.